All right. Hello, everyone. My name is Karen Cardell, and I am an instructor for the New Community Corporation's Adult Learning Center. I had also been teaching with Literacy Volunteers of America for Passaic and Essex County. And I also am a tutor with PD Green, the PD Green program in Essex County, but it's actually expanded quite a bit. I tutor in Essex County. And I have put together a slideshow that talks about self-assessment techniques for ESOL learners. So hopefully it's functioning properly. Let me see if I can open that up.
While she's opening up, for those of you that don't know, PD Green is a prison adult education program.
Yes. All right, so my presentation today is on self-assessment techniques for ESOL learners. And so my questions in my presentation are, how can we improve our students' understanding of English while keeping them interested in the lessons? What is the best method of correcting students' writing errors? That was actually the question that Eric asked me about initially. And my take on that was, it's the best way would be to help work with them to get them to self-assess. In this workshop, we will take a look at some of the activities that combine ESOL lessons with English language learner self-evaluation techniques. And by employing some of these activities, we can encourage students to set their own learning goals and eventually learn to edit their own written work, hopefully. All right, so in my presentation, I have a couple of videos, which I hope are helpful and not too overbearing. And I realized from watching the other two presentations that a lot of you are in the educational field. So if it's repetitive or redundant for you, I apologize.
Let's compare diagnostic versus formative.
Yeah, Karen, I think it's not optimized for sound. So since you turned your microphone
will help
off,
teachers recognize when students are
people can't hear it. So
summative assessments will measure whether a student has mastered.
I'm sorry, is that better?
Yeah, you have to have your microphone on if you don't have it optimized for sound.
I apologize.
A large quantity of material. When should you implement each assessment? Well, diagnostics are often given the first day of class, mostly before starting a course or a new unit. Formative assessments are administered directly during the teaching process, and summative assessments are given last, at the end of the unit or the end of the period of course. What are some examples of each assessment? Diagnostics can usually be found in the course textbook. Texts usually have pre-course tests. Formative assessments can be as simple as using student questioning techniques. And a summative example can be a class thesis paper. Next, how should you use each assessment? Diagnostic assessments can be used to plan future lessons and to differentiate students into groups. Formative assessments are best used to make teaching decisions on the fly. Should I keep explaining or should I move on? Summative assessments should be used to judge whether or not a student can advance through a course.
All right, so that was a basic rundown of the formative, summative, and diagnostic assessments that are normally done in classrooms. And these types of assessments are normally done by the instructor. And so then that moves us into the concept of student self-assessment.
So Karen, before you press play on this, so when you're sharing the screen, you should be able to select optimize for audio, and then also Mike was pointing out that it may be for, depending upon the operating system you're using, it may be under the more section to like share audio, to share sound. Do you see either one of those?
I hit something that said optimize for audio.
Okay. All right. So that should work.
Okay. I'm more used to working in Meet. I apologize to everyone. And then I had everything set up in a different user window, and I could not open Zoom in my regular window. So
No.
these are not set up for this user window.
Uh-huh.
All right, so then in student self-assessment, when we were looking at the last video with formative, summative, and diagnostic assessment, I started trying to refocus those types of assessment toward a student-centered process. So when I first started working with my students, I was assessing them myself. And then I gradually started to try to move everything towards a student-centered self-assessment process. And I realized as I did this that it takes quite a bit of planning and process and explanation to the students of what the process involves. So as I went through this process, I realized that it was best to start from the beginning with student self-assessment, and that worked the best for me. So I'm going to go ahead and play this video to discuss some of the different types of student assessment and why it's beneficial.
Assessment is all around us. If you're a skater at a skate park, you're engaging in self-assessment every time you reflect on your progress and plan your next steps. If you're a runner training for a marathon, you look at time splits and compare it to your goals. If you're a musician, you're engaging in assessment every time you listen to yourself play and make modifications to your approach. As an author, you engage in self-assessment when you revise your work.
Not always individual. Often assessment will happen in community.
If you're a chef, you're engaging in peer assessment when you ask a trusted fellow chef, how does this taste? If you're an artist, you might ask for an extra set of eyes on a particular project. If you're an engineer, you might observe users to see if your design is working. And if you do any kind of creative work, both self-assessment and peer assessment are vital for improving your craft. It helps you refine your process and helps you improve your products. Assessment helps us figure out what we know, what we don't know, and what steps we need to take in the future to master a skill or understand a concept at a deeper level. Okay, but what does this mean in the classroom? Well, it starts with self-assessment. Here, students engage in goal setting, where they set goals, plan their approach, and keep track of the progress. They also engage in self-reflections. Here, they can reflect on the learning process, but also focus on the strengths and weaknesses of their products, which then leads to new iterations. A similar option is a student survey with multiple choice, checkboxes, and Likert scales. In some cases, students might use a self-assessment rubric. Students are able to look at the progression from emerging to mastery with specific descriptions in various categories. They are able to gain an accurate view on what they are doing while also having a clear picture of where they need to be. Students might also use checklists. These can be a powerful diagnostic tool that students use before, during, and after a specific task. When projects are done, they can present their work in a portfolio where they reflect on what they've learned. Peer assessment is also important. One option is the 10-minute peer feedback system. This begins with one student sharing their work or pitching an idea while the other student actively listens. It then moves to a chance to ask clarifying questions, get feedback, respond to feedback, and chart out your next steps. Another option is structured feedback with sentence stems. This is especially helpful for ELL students. Or you could use the 3-2-1 structure. Now this is simple. Students provide 3 strengths, 2 areas of improvement, and 1 question that they still have. Another option is the peer feedback carousel. Here, each group has a stack of sticky notes, and they offer anonymous feedback as they move from group to group to group. Or you could keep it more open-ended with peer coaching. Students interview each other about the process, they guide reflection, and they provide feedback. Now, we often think of classroom assessment as a conversation between teachers and students. But in life, students won't always have a teacher to grade their work or give them necessary feedback. And this is why we need self-assessment and peer assessment every day. The more we can integrate this into our lessons, the better prepared students will be for the creative life.
Okay. All right. So I see in the chat that people are seeing black windows on the screen.
Yeah, so I think there must be something on your home screen that was open and not reading, but now we were able to hear that one better.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you. So that was an explanation of some of the different examples of self-assessment processes and some of the tools that you can use for self-assessment in the classroom. And he also gave examples of peer assessment models. So I listed out the different types of self-assessment examples and peer assessment examples that he gave in the video that we watched. So there's goal setting, self-reflection, a student survey that could be multiple choice or Likert scale modeled, self-assessment rubrics, checklists, portfolios, and then portfolios could be made in many different formats. And then he talked about peer assessment examples, the 10-minute peer feedback model, sentence stems, a 3-2-1 structure, peer feedback carousel, and peer coaching. Okay, I believe that the black blobs are anytime I open a window for me to see the chat. So, or any of the other windows, like my notes. Or blocking the screen. So I apologize for that. So in my slideshow, I've linked some videos to some of these examples. And I've also later in the slideshow have given some other examples by adding tools that you can use to do the student assessments in the classroom. And I'll show you a couple of them. All right, so why should we use self-assessment? Why is it beneficial? So students will better understand the purpose of what we are doing in the class. And hopefully students will have the tools to improve their own writing in English. And why did it start? Writing is a process, not a product. That was a concept from Donald Murray. And I've linked his pamphlet here where he had written about that idea for teaching writing in the classroom. And then this is a website that talks about how, starting with Donald Murray, who was a Pulitzer Prize winning journalist and educator. He wrote an article in 1972 that talked about dealing with writing as a process and how that's changed somewhat our teaching methods when teaching writing. So this is there are more than one online websites that break the writing process down and explain it. This is for a first year writing course at a university, but this is a breakdown of the writing process. And I linked this one because it has a video that breaks down the writing process and talks about it in each part of this process. In each step, it also breaks down all the parts of the steps. And it talks about the how you're never really completed in each step. Like understanding the assignment has multiple steps, and then gathering the ideas to do your thesis has multiple steps, and so on.
And after the session, when we share the PowerPoint, it'll have all the links on it.
Yeah. Okay, so then how does the process work? I started out morphing the formative assessments into self-assessment exercises slowly as I was teaching and doing my lesson planning in my curriculum. And students don't understand these self-assessment processes unless they have a lot of explanation and modeling. The exercises work better if you implement them at the beginning of the semester and weave them in with the existing course materials. And this requires pre-planning your curriculum. And I am learning from my progress and making adjustments each semester. So some of the tools that I use or the processes that I use work well, and some end up not working as well. And then I try to adjust each time I teach another course or each time I try to work through another unit. So this is an example of a goal setting assignment that I had been working with. And this came from writing project that I did in LVA. And these two forms actually came out of the Teaching Adults in ESL resource book. And they're both goal sheets, they're goal worksheets. And I had given another very brief co-workshop with Catherine Angus for LVA. So this link is a little write-up that Catherine did for that. So I just put the link there because there was some, I think it was just useful to have the information that just followed the steps that we were talking about in the brief teaching writing workshop for beginning writers for ESOL. But we were using these two goal worksheets to try to initiate the writing process with some of our beginning ESOL students. And I was discussing how when I was working with some of my students initially, it was very difficult to get them to start writing anything, and it was very difficult for them to think about what they wanted to do in terms of goals. So I found out that if I showed them a picture of what I wanted them to do, that it worked much easier. And I used this chart on the left as an example. And I was talking about who are the people that you want to be able to speak to in English more easily. Who are the people around you in your life. So it's focused on the family in the home, at work, if you do work, things related to yourself, like hobbies or anything you want to do, and you want to be able to speak to people more easily and in the community. So I explained the idea, and then I showed them the example on the one on the left. And then I asked them to draw their own version of the one on the left and fill it in for themselves with their examples. And then in the lines above, they were supposed to fill the names of the people they wanted to talk to in the chart. So I reproduced this on Jamboard. And this I was just making an example, but I put the forms onto the Jamboard. And this was the basic form. I just made a screenshot of it and placed it on the Jamboard. And then on page 2, I covered over the names of the places and the titles of the people with these little shapes so you could fill them in. But these aren't adhered to the background, right? And there's text boxes over them so you could fill it in. This is a copy of the other page. And then this one is a screenshot of this page, because if you're using a computer, you can fill in the text boxes. But if you're using a phone, you can't do that unless you're using a special phone or a special tablet that has touch to type technology attached to it, which most people are not. So for this one, if you use a phone, you need this type of flat image so that you can draw on the phone with your finger and fill in with just touch type writing. So this is an example of something I would do. Originally, we were writing on paper, and it's possible you can send the copy home and have them fill it out on paper or try to draw it themselves on paper, take a picture of it, and then send you the picture, and you can just use the picture of it. Or you can do something like this and drop it into Jamboard, right, and have them fill it out themselves. So this is this was the beginning of a writing assignment to try to start establishing what their goals for English learning and starting to write were. And then this was the beginning of a project where we work forward to start to use that and work it into a project where we were using this and trying to start putting this into writing the first journal or writing assignment. Okay, so then that brings me to specific self-assessment for writing processes. So I have this.
In this video, I'm going to give you 5 ways that you can improve your students' writing today. Hello, welcome back to my channel, Charlie's Lessons, and thank you for coming by to watch another video. So we're going to see 5 tools here that are going to help your students improve their writing in no time. And one of them is with Duolingo. So there's a lot of teachers out there who get really frustrated with their students' writing after they correct it time after time after time and keep getting the same results. Let's see if Pedro's done any better this time. Okay, well that's obviously the wrong word. No, that's the wrong tense. I don't know, what does that mean? Okay, I didn't even understand a word of that paragraph. What does this even say here? Well, these aren't in my glasses. I don't even wear glasses. Moving on, I want to borrow the words of Donald Murray, the great American journalist and English teacher, taught his students that when it comes to writing, it's all about the process and not so much the product. Donald Murray talks about 3 stages for any writing activity that your students do in class. The first one is pre-writing, then drafting, and then finally writing. I want to give students the tools that are going to help them during those writing and drafting stages. And the final thing I want to focus on from Donald Murray is that we need to place the opportunity of discovery in the student's hands. Just think about it like this. You're their teacher now, but you're not going to be around forever. So I just think about the old adage, you can take a fish to water, but you can't make it swim. That's not the phrase. What is it? My first tip is to never take in the student's first piece of work and correct it all yourself. That way the student doesn't really learn what their mistakes were or how to correct them. That's why I suggest using a correction code. So take the student's first draft in and apply the correction code to all the errors the students have made. You then give it back to the students and the students have to write it up again, correcting all the mistakes that you've identified. If you keep doing this, over time, the students will improve. Now, if your students are submitting their work digitally, then you need to tell them about this Duolingo tool called Text Analyzer. All you do is take the text that they have written and put it into the box. Duolingo then comes up with a guide level, and on the right-hand side, it identifies which words meet an A1 level, an A2 level, B1 level, etc. What they can do is they can exchange the lower level words for higher level words. Idea number 3 is using the English vocabulary profile online. Whereas with idea 2, we were looking at the text as a whole, with idea 3, we can identify individual words and find out what level they are. So to do this, we just enter on the website and we pop in a word in the search bar, and it will give us a list of all the different meanings of this word and what level they are associated with. Idea number 4 is an online tool called osdic.com. This is an online dictionary where students can input nouns and get a range of verbs, adjectives, prepositions that collocate with that noun. Now, I know that students hate the concept of collocation because it's one of those things that where teachers have to answer a question about that, all they say to the students is, that's just the way it is. So with this dictionary, students can begin to discover what collocations are typical in English and which aren't. So let's take a look at an example text and I'll show you how I can switch out some lower level words with higher level words to increase the global level of the work. I'm going to show you how we use these 3 examples to improve our students' work. This is a piece of work that was submitted to me on Google Docs. I do receive a lot of writings though on paper, so you can still apply these ideas to if you receive it digitally or traditionally. I'm going to just copy this entire text, go over to Duolingo and paste it here. The guide level is a B1, but I'm more interested in what I can see on the right-hand side. I'm looking at the ones that are associated with A1 and I feel like there's some improvements that could be made there. Let's look at the example for big is typically an A1 level word. And I know this because I can type big into the English vocabulary profile online and check the level here. So what adjectives could we replace big with? I can search for synonyms for big on Google, and here I have a number of different options. Let's take the word large or even huge. Let's put large into the English vocabulary profile, and we can already see that it's an A2 level, which is one higher than big. Or even huge, which is a B1, so 2 levels higher. Let's swap out big for huge, and we can see on the right hand side that the number of A1 words have dropped and a number of B1 words have risen. Again, looking at adjectives, here, he is very good. We can swap out good for a synonym. Go back to Google with synonyms for good, and let's find one that fits the text. Let's use the word exceptional, for example. Let's pop it into the English vocabulary profile, and we can see that exceptional is a B2 level. Let's replace good with exceptional, and we can see now that it's risen again. Now, using a correction code with my students' work, I probably would have identified put a table as WW or wrong word. Now, the student can use table and use the OSDIC website to check collocations with table. Now, we're looking for a verb here, and here we have to lay or to set the table, which is the verb the student's looking for. I've put lay into the English vocabulary profile online, and the phrase lay the table is a B1. So let's change put for lay, and again on the right hand side we can see that it's gone up again. So just by making those small changes to the student's work, we've already increased the level. Once you've taught your students how to use these 3 tools, they'll be expert writers in no time. And that's a Charlie's Lessons guarantee. Once your students have got used to using the Duolingo text analyzer and also the English vocabulary profile online tool, you can then begin to test them on this new vocabulary, which is of a higher level. To do this, you could use tools like Blookit or Kahoot or quizzes. Idea number 5 is having the students collaborate on a writing task. And so each student can share their knowledge on new grammatical structures, new vocabulary, and also ideas on how to organize the writing itself. If you're unsure about how to get your students set up with collaborative tasks in the classroom, then you should probably go ahead and watch my other video on collaborative activities using programs like Canva, Google Docs, and much more. Thank you for watching this video, and I hope this tool can help your students when it comes.
All right, so I think he made an excellent video that gave a lot of good ideas for how to give students the ability to work on their own writing. His teaching is British based, but they have other tools like this that are American English based.
In this video, I'm going to give you...
I touched it. So I went through and linked later in the slideshow his examples. I'm sorry, I have to.
So Karen, some of the people were asking for what the name of that video was or the link for the video. So will those be like
everything is in the presentation.
Okay.
Although the links are in the presentation also.
Okay.
So each of these, so all of these links okay, so the correction code process I have 2 slides for. The first one is the part of a video that we were shown in training when we did the LVA training, and there's actually two. There's ESL Experience Story 1 and ESL Experience Story 2. And for the sake of time, I'm not going to play this now, but this video shows a process where the teacher assists a student in getting an experience story written down on paper, and then guides her through going through and helping her make her own corrections on the story. And they review it together. And all right, so then I have a second slide on correction code examples. And this was an exercise I did a while ago with some of my students. And at that time, I was using a color coding system on Google Docs to color code the grammar. And I did a lot of color coding on this because we were specifically working on grammar. And we were using the accessible X-word grammar lessons for that tutoring session, which I have linked on the side here. And it was lesson 7. And the program is the accessible X-word grammar here. And we were going through, and the lesson was to take the sentences, declarative sentences, and change them into questions with short answers. But we were going through and marking the grammar in the parts of the sentence, because the earlier lessons were talking about how to recognize the main subjects and the full subject phrases and the linking verbs and modal verbs and so on and so forth. So we were working on that. And you can see I made a key where, and the point of showing you the slide is that in his video, he talks about correction codes, and there are many ways to do correction codes. The point is to keep a consistent correction code. So the point is that you make your own correction code, you develop it, and you work with your students and explain how to use it, and you keep it consistent. And when you decide what kind of correction code you're going to use, you model it around whatever materials you're going to be working with. So different books use different codes for grammar and so on and so forth. I use a specific one that goes with the material I refer back to the most.
So yeah, Karen, I just want to underscore this point, right? That, research really indicates that explicit sort of direct instruction on grammar correction is not that helpful, right? And so having learners themselves analyze and self-assess and look closely at what they've written or what they've said is much more helpful than just teachers chiming in and saying, this is the correct way to say it. There's really no evidence that suggests that that's like the best way. So I think this approach of having them think about what they've written, think about what they've said, and and address the corrections themselves is much, much more likely to lead towards changes in their understanding of grammar and syntax.
So this is another example. I just did this yesterday with a class. We were working in Google Classroom, and we were working on a series of scaffolding process where we work through a 9-week course, and from week 1, every week I assign a journal assignment that comes from the book, and the journal assignments are done in Google Docs. And then in week 7, the students have to write a personal essay, but the personal essay is built out of the journals that they wrote previously. And so each journal is fashioned so that they could be built into the paragraphs of the personal essay, which gives me time to have gone over the different personal essays with the students over the last 6 weeks, and then build up writing proficiency and build up the students like having self-corrected the smaller journals each week. And then when we get to the week 7, when they have to put them together in an essay, they have material to work with that builds into their one essay. And this is just a photo, like a screenshot of having gone over with the class one of those student essays. So this is the middle that they write them and they turn them in Google Docs on the classroom. And then I go through it with the student one day, and I go through and mark and try to use some color coding of some corrections and suggestions. And we talk about, I'm marking in this column here, this could be a new sentence. And what were you trying to, like, here, you are in America and English is spoken here, was something that the man said to her. So I was saying this, we normally put a quote there. And so then that was an opportunity to talk about direct or indirect quotes, which really we haven't learned in our class yet. So that's why I made examples in the comment section there. And then I asked the students to go back and make some of these corrections, if possible, in their work. And then they're going to hand their final copy back in tomorrow or Sunday. I'm not sure. It depends on how much time. My students are very, very busy. So then he spoke about text analyzers, and I put the Duolingo research link at the bottom, which is a page that shows a bunch of different research articles from Duolingo. I do not believe that Duolingo is the text analyzer from Duolingo is functional right now. I don't think it's functional anymore. But I did find a couple of other. Pearson has a text analyzer, but it doesn't offer as many functions. The one at the top, the English Grammar Profiler, does work pretty well. And so the link is at the top here, and you plug text into the top here. And then, so if you take a chunk of text like this, and you paste it and hit check complexity, it gives you a breakdown of the text, and it shows you color-coded the level of complexity of the words, but it also highlights some of the grammar structure. So at this level, I have a basic English 2 ESOL class. I just read it through with them, and I try to point out the places where some of their syntax is showing up, where their writing completed their ideas, and where you can see it in the color coding, to try to give them an idea of how they're using their writing to make their ideas flow at this point. My concept with this is to try to get them to see how they're using their words to convey their ideas. but also to get them used to using the tool so that if they want to use the tool later, they've had some experience with it. Collocation tools. I have a what is a collocation dictionary. Then there's some other links here for collocation resources. I like the one-look reverse dictionary and thesaurus the best, and it has a lot of links through to other materials.
Karen, there was a question about whether these are free or subscriptions.
Almost everything on here is free.
Okay.
Some things may have a subscription level, but almost everything is free. And I also tried to lean away from apps that you have to download. I do not like downloading apps myself. English vocabulary profile online. I linked to the American English EVP and English profile. So American English EVP. Again, you would take the words from here if there were words that looked like you might want to improve them on this page, and then you can type them into English profile like in the video and see the level. This is helpful because sometimes one word can have multiple meanings in English, and you can see the different levels of how are we trying to use this word. This is a very good resource for teachers. Sometimes it's a better resource for teachers than students. Students can use it to try to replace words like a thesaurus. I think a thesaurus may be better for that. It's a really good resource for teachers to try to think about at this level, what meaning of the word am I focusing on? And then at later levels, what are the other meanings of the words? Okay, so, and then collaborative rating. I'm kind of running out of time. So I'm going to play this video. This is a collaborative rating, or can be a collaborative rating activity with the class. And I just wanted to mention that.
Okay, hello everyone. With me is Professor Brendan Payne, and he has been teaching writing for a while. Professor,
15 years, yeah,
15 years?
Yeah.
So what tips can you give a teacher teaching writing to
So
students?
when I was learning writing, professors said something to me that was really important. That is the first key in teaching writing is to have them think of themselves as writers before they even begin. So they think, I'm not a writer, I'm not a writer. Yes, you are. Everyone is a writer. Let's just make it better. And there's a great trick that I learned, funny you mention it, called grammar dice. Ooh,
fancy.
Pretty? No, I actually stole this idea from a professional development seminar 10 years ago. The company that made grammar dice has since gone out of business, but I still use it myself. And the key is to get them playing with writing so that they forget that it's education. It doesn't feel like work to them, it feels like a game. And people just love to throw dice.
So you made these dice yourself?
I made these based on the idea that I learned, that I stole from somebody else 10 years ago. As you know, good teachers steal their ideas from
I promote that all the time. Just steal whenever you need to. Wow.
Absolutely.
So how do you use these dice? And I mean, does it work on beginners? Is it more for intermediate, advanced?
There are three different elements at play here. The first part is that it's just fun and simple. And so it's great for beginners in that sense. But advanced students can also benefit from this because they need fluency practice. It's not really instruction when an advanced student is doing it, but it's fluency practice, which is also part of good language education.
Okay, so you've got a couple of dice here.
Right. These three are the basic dice. There's one that has consonants on it, one that has vowels on it. Y is on the
It's on the
vowel die.
Ah, there we go. So we've got
So that
the
we've
vowels.
got 20 and
So
6.
6. Oh,
Yeah,
that's
this is an icosahedron, so it has 20 sides, and this is a cube that has 6 sides. And then we have a tetrahedron with numbers on it.
Wow.
Now,
Okay.
the original kit that I purchased 10 years ago was little dice like you would have for a board game.
This is way more fun.
But it's so much more fun. So I just printed out a pattern and used a little X-Acto knife and some poster board to make these.
Made this, and you've used this a number of years.
Oh yeah, I've been using this for 10 years.
Okay, so you've got the consonants, you've got the vowels, you've got number dice,
And then this is for a little more advanced, right? So
Okay,
we
so let's
start
start
with
with the-
these. You roll the dice and see what comes up. Oh, we've got G, I, and 3. That means you need to make a sentence that has those elements in it. It has 3 words, each of which contain the letters G and I. Wow, that's really easy because we can use ing to make a whole bunch of different words. But if the students don't have really strong vocabulary, if they don't have a strong lexicon, you can start with a list of words that might go in here. Oh, what words have G and I in them, everybody? Gift, giddy, so
any words that just have
intrigue, and then you just brainstorm the words together,
Yeah.
and then they individually make a sentence. Sometimes I have to model that for them. We make a sentence together first,
Okay.
and then they make their own sentences, and then we look at the sentence and say, "Oh, look, this word has this sentence has these 3 words in it." But then you look at the sentences and see what mistakes they're making.
Okay.
And that's where these come in.
Okay, but before we move on, okay, so basically the sentence or the word they make, it has to have G and I and then 3 words in it. So they make
3
a sentence.
words with G and I in it. So
Okay.
it might be, for example,
okay, so gift.
I want to give a gift to the gorilla.
Gorilla, and so it's got 3 words in it, and it has to contain, and each word has to contain an I and a G. That's
Right.
so fun.
It's
Okay, so I thought that this was a wonderful activity to use with the students. I am online. So I put a link here for a site called FS Dice that allows you to create your own set of die with words on it or letters. You type in what you want on the dice, and you can have 1 or 2 dice on here. So you're able to roll like here and then get some words to work with. And you might have to open 2 windows to get multiple dice with that. This video is a little longer, but again, we're running out of time. So, and then there's more collaborative learning activities from the gentleman who made the writing tools. And then,
When I'm
played. So, and then there are multiple tools that I've pulled from online that are all available for free. A lot of them are Google Apps based, and you can make a copy and share and open them and make a copy for yourself, and they will save into your own drive, so you can edit them and use them in your classroom. I made a slide for how to use this presentation. So there's a video that shows you how to open it and make a copy for yourself if you do not know how to do that. Rather than requesting edit access, you make a copy for yourself, but this video explains how you can do that. All right, so that's all of, oh, and this page is a link for a list of ESOL materials that I had that function with cell phones. So then when you make these tools, you can get material that you could drop into some of these tools. And also the writing and teaching links that go along with my slides. I'm sorry, so does anyone have any questions?
So this is a lot of information, Karen, so that you've pulled together. So I think, people keep asking for the links. So when we send out the PowerPoint, all these links are live, I believe, right? And so that it'll take people to the various resources and sites that you've identified.
Yes.
Yeah. So, so the other thing I would recommend is, I said this in the previous session, if you haven't done it before, at the bottom of the chat, you can, where the three dots are, you could click on that and then save the chat, because there was some recommendation for some other sites. Debbie had mentioned one from Cambridge, and some people had mentioned some other things. So you might want to download it there.
So I posted the link just now to a PDF version of my slideshow, and I will also give it to you, Eric, so you can send it out.
Great. Great. So any other questions for Karen? I mean, I think the whole idea, it seems to me like one of the key ideas is who you're starting kind of with the students, with who their audience is, kind of going back to your initial slides, right? Your initial handouts about who is it that you want to communicate to, and then how are you going to communicate to them, right? So that I think, so when you go through these various resources, if you're writing for a teacher or a job, right? So maybe you're going to identify higher level words, right? But if you're writing to a friend, a family member, right, and you want to be, a little bit more informal, you won't necessarily switch out those words for a, a more academic word, because that's not the audience that you're writing for.
Right, of course. I mean, the idea is mainly to help them learn how to use the tools in general, and then the type of writing that you're doing.
Right.
And there are some links in here for, there are 2 OWL workshop pages that are like Purdue OWL, but for ESOL. And there's a whole list of workshops for all the types of writing. And they're actually this one. They click through 2 sites like this where all of the, it's a whole writing lab.
Mm-hmm.
And these videos play in both English and Spanish, or I'm sorry, this plays in English, but the transcript is available in English and Spanish. And then it goes through and you can look at all the different types of writing. And so if you have students who you need to talk about the different types of writing, these are types of tools that you can help work with them. And there are also things in here like I have this one because of the spelling and grammar demonstration. There's a video that goes through how to use a spelling and grammar checker like Google Docs or Microsoft Word, and how it goes through all the steps of how to put your material into it and how to use the spelling checker in steps. And you can translate it into multiple languages. You can translate the transcript.
Great. So Karen, thank you so much. You're getting lots of good comments in the chat where people really appreciate all the work and the time that you put in to pull these resources together. And I think they're going to be helpful for people working with their students.
Thank you so much.